Coming up on Millennial.
We were meeting last night and she's using these Gen Z terms that I really felt old for like the first time in my life. I don't spend enough time on TikTok.
I was going to say, you got to get on TikTok so you can pick up on the lingo so we can be the old people that are like, hello, fellow kids.
I really am feeling that way.
I mean, there's a reason, Andrew, why you and I are probably some of the first generation of people in the States not to be vaccinated for smallpox.
Because it's gone.
You know why it's gone? Vaccines.
Vaccines.
We're making people so miserable that they're happy when there's been potential COVID exposure so they can get away from people.
Yeah, it's completely nihilistic. But I would have been like, okay, well, worst case scenario, I get it. Hopefully I'm okay. But you know what? I won't have to go into work.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that you're like, I hope I don't die, but I get 2 weeks off work. So
yeah.
Pretty sweet. Welcome to Millennial 744. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Laura.
We aren't joined by Pam this week. She's actually with her fam in Portland, but one of our listeners will be joining us later in today's episode, Camille. She's one of our Bay patrons, and she has worked in retail management over the course of the pandemic. So we're going to talk about what that's been like, and also the recent news that a record number of people quit their jobs in September. So we'll be digging into all of that. But first, Laura, something happened to me for the first time during the course of this pandemic.
Tell me.
I got hassled for wearing a mask.
For wearing a mask?
For wearing a mask.
You got hassled for having basic consideration for your fellow man.
So get this, I'm sitting at a casino bar over the weekend, and one thing I love about Vegas is a lot of the casinos, they have these bar top video poker machines, and you can sit there playing 25-cent poker or blackjack or some other games. I love just chilling there because they'll also bring you free drinks, the bartender who's right in front of you, so you can get a lot of free drinks really quick.
Right.
And so I sit down, and I'm wearing my mask until I get my drink. And the guy sitting next to me turns to me and says, oh, you don't have to wear that. And I'm like, well, I don't mind wearing it right now. He's like, oh, but you don't have to. You're at the bar. I'm like, it's okay. I don't want to. So immediately I'm getting a bad vibe from this guy, right? So I just turn away. My drink comes a few minutes later, and I'm playing my video poker, living my own life. And he was clearly drunk. So like 10 minutes later, he turns back to me and he said, oh, you've taken your mask off. And I'm like, why do you have to note that? I'm thinking to myself. And I'm like, yeah, I really don't mind wearing it. And then he's like, oh, but it's so nice to breathe without a mask. And then he starts going, yeah, I know. Laura's giving me a face right now. And I'm like, I got really annoyed. But then what especially pissed me off, and I didn't realize this until like a minute or two after his second confrontation, this motherfucker was smoking next to me. And a smoker is trying to tell me about how to take care of my lungs and how to breathe.
Man, I think I would have been tempted to turn to him and be like, I wish you would put one on because I don't want to see your face.
I know. If it had dawned on me as he was hassling me, like the irony of him telling me about it while he's smoking, I would have turned back to him and been like, dude, you're trying to tell me off while you're smoking a cigarette and giving yourself cancer? Like, I literally would have said that because this guy was starting to bother me. But yeah. So like I said, this guy was drunk. He did walk away. And then the person on my right, as soon as he left, she turned to me and was like, was he hassling you over a mask? And then that's when I was like, yeah, and he was smoking. Can you believe it?
What I don't understand is why people feel compelled to hassle other people, harass other people for doing something that literally does not impact them.
Right. Zero effect.
If anything, you were protecting him by wearing a mask.
Right.
You wearing a mask was doing nothing to him. I know I haven't had this experience, but I know my dad got harassed in a grocery store last year for wearing a mask at the height of the big surge last summer and fall. This couple harassed him in the aisle of a grocery store for wearing a mask. And it's like,
yeah,
when people decide to turn an issue of public health into their whole identity and your whole personality is based on a certain political figure who I'm just going to guess
Right.
this guy that you were sitting next to was a big fan of.
Yeah.
It just shows that you have nothing else. Like there's no other personality going on there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And, because I could tell he was drunk, I didn't get too worked up about it. But it's so uncomfortable. And I think he did get the hints after the first attempt.
Good.
To lecture me about the mask, because I did turn away and I just kind of started ignoring him when he tried to say a couple other things.
Jesus.
So anyway, on last week's episode, we spoke about some of the old toys that we used to be obsessed with as kids. And we got a lot of feedback about that discussion. Many of our listeners shared the different toys and games that their kids are obsessed with. And the one reason that people were offering feedback is because I had said that it doesn't seem like kids are really obsessed with physical toys anymore. To me, it seems like all they were obsessed with were the digital games like Roblox and Minecraft and, etc. It turns out that's not the case. And I think the reason I didn't realize this is because A, obviously I don't have kids, but B, I only really listen to tech podcasts. And when they're talking about kids being obsessed with things, all I hear about are the tech things. Kate said Pokemon cards are still alive and well, so is Polly Pocket. Kids collect blind bag collectible stickers and toys like mad. Beyblades are still huge, as are Lol dolls, Shopkins, Hatchimals, and Beanie Boos. Cheryl said, I work in a school, and it's very true that Pokemon cards are extremely popular. Also, I've noticed a lot of sports cards lately. And Ryan said, reality is a big part of the popularity of Minecraft. It's digital Legos. Real life Legos are also going as strong as ever. I'm a Lego customer more than ever. Yeah, so I wanted to throw that feedback in. It's good to see that kids are still playing with physical toys. That does warm my heart. In my defense, what I meant to say last week is I don't hear about total obsessions that are being banned from schools, because we were talking about like Pokemon and the little pet toys, Tamagotchis being banned from school. I don't hear about that anymore. I'm sure it's still the case now that I read through all this feedback.
I mean, it makes sense that, from your vantage point, it would seem like kids are more into digital goods, because when you're out and about and you see kids, what are they playing on, right? Like they have their phones, they have their tablets on them. And I'm guessing that those are easier to carry around than a lot of physical toys. Although I could be speaking out of line there. We're going to get feedback next week being like, no, my kid brings their physical toys with them everywhere. So feel free to correct me.
Yeah, they're playing Beyblades right on the table at the restaurant. But I know what you're talking about. Like, you go to restaurants and you see kids typically have the phones and the tablets, and that's so the parents can try to have a somewhat peaceful dinner and the kids can be distracted with the screen.
And I don't blame them.
Yeah. No, I get it too.
I know there are some people who are really judgmental about, how much screen time you should allow your kids to have. And I think that that's really a personal decision. And if you're concerned about it, you should have conversations with, a professional about what might be best for your family.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally get it. Sometimes parents need a break, and it's super easy to put an iPad in front of the kid for 30 minutes and be like, oh my God, let me breathe.
And it truly does the trick. That's why parents depend on it. Like, I've seen my sister with her two sons in the car. Like, if one of them's having a tantrum, you just hand them the phone, hit play on Baby Shark, problem solved. Like, that solves things immediately. So I get it. I get why you have to do that sometimes. But anyway, thanks for that feedback.
So we have a little bit of news that's hit between episodes. First of all, Beto O'Rourke has announced that he's running for governor in Texas. That's exciting news. And I can't say that it's surprising. We remember that he ran for the Senate against Ted Cruz a few years ago, lost by a very narrow margin. Beto is very popular in Texas, and Texas has been increasing its blue representation. So I would say right now is as good a time as any for Beto. I hope it works out for him this time. And then also Steve Bannon has surrendered himself to the FBI. So, there's that.
That was nice to see. That was the same
It
day.
was.
And here's another news update. Britney was officially freed from her conservatorship.
That's right.
So it felt like a very good day. I feel like there was something else that happened on Friday that was very good news. But yeah. And by the way, speaking of Beto, I just want to make my recommendation right now. If you want to learn more about Beto, and I'll be following his campaign for governor. I think that's very exciting that he's going to be running. There was a documentary on HBO called Running with Beto, and it followed his campaign for Senate against Ted Cruz in 2018. I love these political documentaries, like every single one.
Me too.
I find fascinating because there's a clear arc with the documentary, them running for office, and they either succeed or fail. It's always a fun watch. There's a Mayor Pete one out. Did you hear about that? It was just released on Amazon.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I did
neither.
watch, I think it was called Knocking Down the House, and it was about primarily focused on AOC when she was running.
Oh, that one
for
was
her
so
House
good.
seat.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Mm-hmm.
Featured Cori Bush as well.
Yeah.
And a couple of others.
Yes. Yeah, that was great. Thank you, Catherine. She reminded me the other big thing that happened this past Friday. Taylor Swift's Red, Taylor's version, came out. So yeah, it was a big day.
Yeah. So what's going on with her and Jake Gyllenhaal? I keep seeing memes, but I don't really understand it.
I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so I'm not a Swiftie. Pam would have the answer here, but here's what I've gathered. So Taylor just released the re-recording of Red. I think we spoke about this a while ago. She's re-recording all her earlier albums because she doesn't have the rights to them, so she's kind of taking them back by re-recording them. She released Red, Taylor's version. This is the second one to be released, and there's a few more still coming. There's a song on Red called All Too Well, and this song is about her relationship with Jake Gyllenhaal. On Taylor's version, there is now a 10-minute version of All Too Well. And this one has more lyrics in it, so there's more stuff about her relationship with Jake. And people love this song. So this new 10-minute version of All Too Well came out. And so we're kind of like digging up the old dirt on Jake Gyllenhaal. So that's why you're hearing about Taylor and Jake Gyllenhaal. She also did All Too Well on SNL on Saturday, the 10-minute version. She just did one song on SNL. It was All Too Well. She also released All Too Well 10-minute version, acoustic version, Taylor's version. There's a lot going on with Taylor right now.
Yeah, I'm disappointed to hear that apparently her portrayal of Jake Gyllenhaal is not a very positive one. I personally like him as an actor, and at least according to TikTok and all the memes, if you're a Swiftie, Jake Gyllenhaal is like persona non grata.
Yeah. Jake did her dirty. That's what we have gathered from Red. And actually, there's been a lot of writing on this over the past week, too, about relationships between an older man and a younger girl, because I think there was a pretty sizable age gap there.
Yeah, I think she was like 21 when they dated. She was very young, and that's weird.
Yeah.
At the very least. Something else I wanted to bring up, Chris mentioned it in our Discord, and I'm so glad they brought this up. Alex Jones, judge ruled against him. Rewinding a bit here, the Sandy Hook families of the children that were tragically murdered in the school shooting in Sandy Hook in Connecticut several years ago, they won their lawsuit against Alex Jones. Judge ruled against him because he failed to comply with the discovery process, so he lost by default. And really, why would he comply with anything?
When he doesn't have a case.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a well-deserved victory, but somber note for sure.
Yeah. But it was good to see. And that was another thing that happened on Friday. So that was busy Friday for sure.
For sure.
That can just be our podcast from now on. Let's just recap the past Friday's news, good or bad.
We can be like, what's that podcast Spotify does? Your Daily Drive.
Oh, yeah.
Daily Millennial. Weekly Millennial.
Your Friday report released on Wednesday. Perfect. So more to come on today's episode. But first, this week's episode is sponsored by Public.com. On Public.com, you can start investing on a smaller scale with slices of shares. Invest in what you believe in with any amount of money. You can also exchange ideas and insights with a community of investors and build your portfolio with confidence. Public.com makes it easy to learn and invest and surrounds you with a community of others who are investing in stocks and ETFs as well as crypto. What I also love is that Public.com puts stocks together in themed collections. And then there's ETFs, which are groups of companies all wrapped up in a fund that you buy into. These are really great to invest in because if one particular company in that ETF has a bad day, that's okay because you didn't put all your eggs in one basket, the eggs being the money. That fund has multiple stocks in it, all smoothing out each other's crazy ups and downs. So in other words, ETFs can help your portfolio run smoothly with steady growth over time. Public.com is a very easy to use app, so you won't feel like it's out of your league, unlike other trading apps, which can be very confusing. And like I was saying during our investment discussion last week, it's amazing how easy getting into investing can be these days. Start investing with as little as $1 and get a free slice of stock up to $50 when you join Public.com today. Visit public.com/millennial to download the app and sign up. That's public.com/millennial. Valid for U.S. residents 18 and over, subject to account approval. See public.com/disclosures. This is not investment advice.
We're going to end each episode with Andrew being like, this is not financial advice. I don't remember if we talked finances, but just in case to cover all our bases, this is not financial advice.
Or just say at the end, this isn't advice. None of this was advice. Don't listen to any of this.
Like, see a financial advisor, go to therapy, call your mom. Like, this is not advice.
Don't listen to our opinions on kids and toys.
Yeah, we don't know what we're talking about.
So we have a show-related announcement. We said recently we were looking for a new social media manager, and we are very happy to say that we very quickly found somebody. And by the way, a bunch of our listeners wrote in applying for the role. Thank you so much to everybody who did. We got many great applications, and this is what sucks about hiring. It's saying no to people who are absolutely qualified. So thank you to everybody who did apply. We really appreciate you reaching out. It really does mean a lot that you want to work with us. We did hire somebody named Chloe, and she is starting working for us this week. And we love her already. She has been a delight to work with. Here's the fun twist on Chloe. She's a Gen Zer. She's close to 10 years younger than us. Mm-hmm. But she had an awesome resume and she had awesome ideas. So we were very quickly drawn to her. And I just freaking love that a podcast called Millennial has a Gen Zer on the team running the social media accounts. And I said to Chloe, and we're going to do this soon, we're going to update the social media bios to say at the end, this account run by a Gen Zer. And I think it'll be so funny to see a Twitter account that says Millennial, then at the end, account run by Gen Zer.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest. We hired social media managers in the first place because we were doing a very inadequate job of managing our social media.
Yeah.
And who better to do this than somebody who, one, does it for a living, but also someone who's just entrenched in that environment. I mean,
right.
Chloe, she's been amazing to talk to so far. She's doing a lot of groundwork to really get to know the show's voices. You know, she's obviously doing this for MuggleCast as well. Mm-hmm. So she's just putting a lot of effort into, you know, amplifying all of the great work that Jewel did for us over the years. And I'm super excited to work with her. I really hope that she'll feel comfortable poking fun at us sometimes through the social channels.
Yeah. Oh, she already was doing it to me on the MuggleCast one earlier today. So
good.
And we were meeting last night and she's using these Gen Z terms that I really felt old for like the first time in my life. I was like, okay, yeah. So why don't you do that? And she just goes, yeah, bet. And I'm like, what? Yeah, bet? Yeah, bet? Yeah, what? But, you know, like over Zoom, sometimes the audio quality isn't great. So she was saying bet. I didn't really hear that, though. I heard like bet. And then she had to tell me Gen Zers use bet, meaning I'll do it. I'm going to do it. You can bet on it. I'd never heard that in my life. See, I don't spend enough time on TikTok.
See, I was going to say, you got to get on TikTok so you can pick up on the lingo so we can be the old people that are like, hello, fellow kids.
I really am feeling that way. So, yeah, it's been very enlightening so far. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, but she's amazing, and I'm so excited for our partnership.
Definitely. And she's a lot of fun to talk to. So I think we'll have her on the show at some point because maybe we can have like a Gen Zer teaches millennials. I don't know, something.
That would be amazing.
She has a great story about her getting vaccinated too. So I told her she has to share it on Millennial. It's unbelievable.
Well, speaking of vaccines, we can leap into our first story here today. And this is a story that has a place very close to my heart because this is a place that's very close to my heart. Costa Rica has become the first country in the world to make COVID vaccines mandatory for children ages 5 to 11.
Wow.
I think a lot of our longtime listeners probably know this, but if you're newer to the show, I lived in Costa Rica for a couple of years, have people down there who are very near and dear to my heart. I wish that I could visit more than I get a chance to. It's been a few years since I got to go back. But this was really exciting to see because I feel like there has been quite a bit of progress there around vaccines that we haven't necessarily seen in this country. So I wanted to bring it up on the show, one, because it just warms my heart, but two, in our listener survey we just did, there was a request for more international stories. And while we want to make sure that we're only talking about things that we feel well informed about, this felt like something that we could, talk about and compare it to our own situation here in the States. And, I could bring the perspective of having lived there, being really happy to see this.
Yeah, I'm curious because you were living there. I'm sure you still have a bunch of friends who are there. How do they feel about this?
Everybody feels like it's normal and just the natural progression of things. I reached out to a few of my friends, and probably the closest thing that I got to a negative response was, nobody likes it when the government tells you to do things, but this is really important. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And it really was just illuminating for me to hear that from my friends there when I look at the fact that I have friends here who are still questioning this vaccine and still buying into some really faulty logic and faulty sources around vaccines and the virus and everything.
Yeah.
But this will be starting in March of 2022. So Costa Rica will begin giving 1.5 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine to children aged 5 to 11, and did a little bit of digging on population stats in the country. 55% of the population has been vaccinated, with more than 70% of those aged between 12 and 19 having received at least one dose. And this was something very encouraging to me, but also it's a very deep contrast to how people are feeling here in the States. The University of Costa Rica did a survey, and 69% of Costa Ricans surveyed are in favor of the vaccine mandates. 69%. Can you imagine?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I know. You don't see that here.
You don't see that here. Furthermore, 90% of respondents said that they believe the vaccine is safe.
Ooh, very high.
Also would not happen here.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, us being in a country that is struggling to get most adults vaccinated, how does Costa Rica's approach strike us? Do we think something like this could ever be accomplished here, or is it going to take 50 years of progress before something like a COVID vaccine becomes normalized?
Yeah, so I certainly understand why parents want to do their research before getting their kids vaccinated. Of course, I totally get that. Or even waiting it out a little while to see additional research be published. But in terms of mandatory vaccines for kids, I wanted to try to answer this question by looking at what vaccines are mandated across all 50 states in America. And as far as I can tell, all 50 states require 2 vaccines, the polio vaccine and then the DTaP vaccine, which covers multiple things. These illnesses and the vaccines for them have been around for a very long time. And there's just a public consensus at this point that we don't want our kids getting infected with any of these illnesses. So we give the kids the vaccines and they're mandatory and there's no question about it. So will we ever get to that point with COVID and vaccinating against COVID? I don't think so. At best, it's going to take a very long time if we ever even get there. And we're going to first have to get far away from all the misinformation out there.
Yeah.
And we don't even know if that's ever going to happen. So we may never get to the consensus that Costa Rica has. And mandatory COVID vaccines for kids may never happen in America.
Yeah. What I find so interesting about their approach, Costa Rica's Department of Public Health acknowledged that while children are very unlikely to become seriously ill with COVID-19, that they are extremely likely to incubate it and spread it to other vulnerable populations. So they're taking an approach that is more about the greater good for all the people, as opposed to, doubling down on the personal liberties argument. Not to say that no one there feels that way. Countries and cultures, they're not a monolith, right? Like there are diverse opinions everywhere. But it is just interesting to look at these 2 countries, Costa Rica and the United States. They mean so much to me. And in a lot of ways, Costa Rica feels like home to me too. So it's just very interesting to feel like I'm looking at these 2 places that are so important to me, having very radically different responses to vaccine rollouts.
Yeah. Does it make you want to move back?
If it were feasible, I would do it, but it's just not in the cards for me right now. I couldn't do my job from there. Mark doesn't speak Spanish, so also for his job prospects, there are other cities that are probably more advantageous for the both of us.
Right. Not a ton of video game development in Costa Rica.
No, not really. Not yet, but let's work on it, y'all. Costa Rica's beautiful.
I'm sure.
But something that I wanted to point out, in contrast to how this vaccine mandate is being received in Costa Rica also a few months ago required that all public employees be vaccinated. And that was not met with the same response that it's been met with here. But just this last week, the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals put a hold on Biden's mandate to require companies with more than 100 employees to require COVID vaccines.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
These are adults. These are adults being like, no, my rights.
Yeah. But these are private
do a Southern
companies.
accent. It's not fair.
But I mean, you live in the South, so it's okay.
Right. It's okay. I'm Southern. It doesn't prevent private employers from having vaccine requirements. It just means that the federal government cannot require those private companies to have vaccine requirements, if that makes sense. There are still plenty of private companies that will be requiring that for their employees. Just like, as we mentioned several episodes ago, there are so many vaccines that you have to just exist in a society. If you want to get on a plane and fly to certain countries, guess what? You're going to have to get vaccines before you do that. If you want to go to public school, if you want to go to college or university, lots of vaccines that are required with that. So I do think it's going to take incremental progress. It's just funny because I find myself wondering, because our grandparents are of the age to remember polio outbreaks. My grandparents have told me about it every summer. There would be outbreaks and they would have to shut down all the movie theaters and all the pools and basically everywhere that you could congregate in public. And I wonder, at the time, was there this level of resistance to the polio vaccine when it was discovered?
I think misinformation was just way less rampant. You didn't have social media to look at. you didn't have 24-hour news to watch. There was
you
word
don't
of
have
mouth, but
InfoWars.
yeah. There wasn't this crazy right-wing radio like InfoWars. Just misinformation has gotten so bad. And I'm sure there were people who were maybe against the vaccines, but not nearly as many as there are now against the COVID vaccine. And like, we take the fact that we've basically eradicated polio.
Yeah.
We take that fact for granted. What it always comes back to for me is like, can't you just appreciate the science and the vaccines? Like, just be happy.
I mean, there's a reason, Andrew, why you and I are probably some of the first people in the States, some of the first generation of people in the States not to be vaccinated for smallpox.
Because it's gone.
Because it's gone. You know why it's gone? Vaccines.
Vaccines.
Yeah. But anyway, just wanted to share that and just give some love to my second home of Costa Rica. And I was also really thankful for this story because it, made me reach out to some friends and catch up with them and ask what they were thinking and feeling. But it was also just a great opportunity to reconnect with some folks that I hadn't talked to in a little while. So, and they're all doing great. Well. So I feel very fortunate.
Awesome. Well, speaking of the COVID vaccines, this just broke before we started recording, so I wanted to mention it. The Pfizer booster is likely to be approved by the FDA for all adults by the end of this week.
Awesome.
Some of us in America have been able to get the booster shot depending on your age and if you have any pre-existing conditions and whatnot. I haven't fallen into one of those categories, and now it looks like that maybe this Friday I could get Pfizer if I want. I had 2 of the Modernas. I'm going to pull Nicki Minaj and do a little research myself this week. Like, do I want to get that 3rd shot now? Do I want to wait a couple weeks? Do I want to get Pfizer? Do I want to get Moderna? What did you get for the 3rd?
I got Moderna.
So you had Moderna for all 3?
Yes. Yeah. And it just so happened that in my area, Moderna was the most commonly available. So that's what I went for. But the FDA did approve that mix and match approach, to your point, yes, Andrew. So if you received, Moderna or Pfizer, you can flip-flop for your booster. If you receive Johnson & Johnson, you should definitely get Moderna or Pfizer as a booster.
Yeah.
Just higher efficacy rates. But yeah, I mean, if you're not sure, you should talk to your doctor. You can also get your antibody levels tested to see what your immune response is looking like right now to see if it's necessary.
Yeah.
But it also can't hurt.
I trust the science, absolutely. But it still does feel weird to do a mix and match. Like, I kind of want to be a clean sweep of Moderna. I want to be a gold star Moderna gay.
Then do that.
Okay.
Then do that. The efficacy rates on doing a straight Moderna are very high.
Yeah.
As are the rates of doing 2 Moderna and 1 Pfizer and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. And my brother who got Johnson & Johnson, I think is going to get Pfizer or Moderna. He has to. Good. You have to if you're Johnson & Johnson. Yeah, these other ones.
He's not
going to
get another J&J, is he?
No. I mean, what's the difference at this point? It's still one shot. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, all right, y'all. We'll be back to the show in just a moment. But first, I wanted to take a quick break to tell you about our second sponsor this week. They're Way, the hair care brand that is single-handedly saving my hair this winter season. We all know that harsh winter weather can be hard on our hair because the dry air sucks all the moisture away. I've been a fan of Way's leave-in conditioner before they were even a sponsor of this show because it conditions, detangles, and leaves hair smooth, shiny, and manageable all year long. I'm in love with everything Way makes because it's gentle on my color-treated hair, but super effective at keeping me from getting buildup or being super dry. Also, this stuff smells amazing, like what you'd imagine some fancy French boutique to smell like. Anytime I'm out and about after I've washed my hair or put in some leave-in conditioner, I'm guaranteed to get compliments. For protection from heat, dryness, and frizz, the way to healthier hair is Way's best-selling leave-in conditioner. It protects hair from heat up to 450 degrees, smells completely amazing, and is color-safe and cruelty-free. Discover a new way of life with cruelty, sulfate, and paraben-free hair care, body, and fragrance products from Way. Go to theway.com, that's THEOUAI.com, and use code MILL to get 15% off your entire order. That's 15% off your entire order at theway.com, THEOUAI.com, when you use code MILL.
All right. We are now joined by one of our listeners and Bay supporters, Camille. Hi, Camille. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hey.
Thanks so much for having me.
You are welcome. It's great to have you. We're going to talk about working in retail during COVID and retail management. But first, tell us a little more about yourself, and that'll help explain why we're having you on for this discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Camille. I live in Milwaukee right now, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I worked retail all through the pandemic. Honestly, been working retail since I turned 18. So about 12 years now. And then I was in retail management. I've been in retail management for the past almost 4 years.
Are you vaccinated?
I am. I'm fully vaccinated. I haven't gotten my booster yet, but that's on the books. So
Perfect.
So we met last week, and I learned a couple interesting things about you. You grew up in Alaska?
yes. Yeah. So I was born and raised. I lived there until I was just about to turn 15, right before high school. I was born and then lived in Fairbanks for all of my school and grew up there.
Do you want to intro that story about the sub-zero temperatures?
Yeah, so that's kind of one of the fun facts I use, like anytime there's an icebreaker game or whatever. So in elementary school, we had recess, and the rule in the school district I was in Fairbanks, which is like right in the smack dab middle of the state, is that you will have outdoor recess unless it is negative 20 degrees or colder without wind chill. So if it's negative 18, negative 19, you're going outside. And for at least at my school, until you were in fourth grade, you had 3 recesses. So there was like a 15-minute one, and then a 30-minute one at lunch, and then a 15-minute one later in the day. And even like when you're older, you get, a 30-minute recess before or after lunch, and you're going outside unless it is negative 20 degrees or colder.
That is crazy. Did you just run around outside just to keep warm? Like, you can't stand still.
Yeah. So we would walk like there's like a kind of a lap. If you weren't playing on the playground, you would walk laps. My elementary school actually was out a little bit further. So we had an ice rink that some people would, or that some parents would, once it like got cold enough to freeze, would ice over and try to maintain. It's anyway, anyone who knows about ice skating outdoors, it's horrible if it's not inside because it's like not smooth at all. But that was my trick, was if you brought your ice skates to ice skate at lunch, you didn't get to start putting them on until like the recess bell rang. So you could get like 10 minutes because you're lacing up your skates and then go out and skate for 10 minutes and then have to go inside early to take your ice skates off.
Wow.
Hacks to stay inside longer so you don't freeze to death. That's funny. Also, I need to give a special shout out to the poster behind Camille. It just says bagels like 5 times.
Love it.
Laura, when I met with her last week, it was kind of dark and I couldn't really make out what it said. And I was like, should I ask if that says bagels? And I didn't want to, but I also did because I'm obsessed with bagels.
Me too.
And Camille, I aspire to be somebody who hangs up a poster on their wall that just says bagels 6 times down it. So respect.
Thank you. It's kind of my thing. The rest of my family is like not super into bagels, and that's like the only thing I want to eat ever. So,
oh my God,
I
same.
love bagels.
Yeah.
What's your favorite type of bagel?
I unfortunately am very boring. Sesame seed with just plain cream cheese.
That is pretty boring.
Yeah.
I like veggie cream cheese and maybe like a wheat bagel, or I love salt bagels, which are definitely not healthy for you, or a chocolate chip bagel, and bagel sandwiches.
I love bagel sandwiches, like an egg and cheese on a bagel.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. Duncan's got that Beyond sandwich. I get it with on a bagel instead. Good. Yeah, it really is. So anyway, on to more important topics. So since, Camille, you've worked in retail and retail management, I wanted to discuss working retail during the pandemic and why so many people are leaving their jobs and or not returning to work. The reason I wanted to discuss this is because last week we learned that a record 4.4 million people quit their jobs in September. And the Washington Post did a great job of summarizing what's been going on. They said, quote, "A number of factors have led to the churn. The September data came during a period when coronavirus cases were spiking, creating childcare and safety pressures for many employees as they rethought their daily routines. Many other workers, meanwhile, were lured to other jobs because of better pay and benefits as employers became desperate to fill openings. And a strong stock market combined with stimulus checks and other benefits have helped pad workers' savings, making it easier for them to cut loose or retire rather than hold on to a job they no longer want. And quits are highest in the industries that feel least safe, including retail, leisure and hospitality, health services, and education." So does this align with what you've been seeing, Camille? Because as somebody who's worked in management, I'm sure you've been involved to at least some extent with the hiring and losing people. Does this echo what you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's, everything that you just mentioned, but it's the combination, I think, of the fact that people have just gotten to the point where, retail jobs before the pandemic were certainly not for everyone. It's dealing with the public every day. It's being customer facing, it's a lot. So you kind of add on all these other additional stressors, and it just gets to the point where, full disclosure, I told you this, Andrew, I had my last day in management about 3 weeks ago. I actually just got a new job that I started.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was a long thing. That's anyway, something else to talk about. The fact that everyone's saying everyone is hiring. And I'm like, are they really? Because that's not been my experience, but cool.
I'm trying.
I've been trying for quite a while. With all the additional stressors of everything in the pandemic, that's all completely true. We can get into this later. But as someone who, like I said before, has been working customer, every job I have ever had has been interacting with the public and customer facing. I have never been treated so terribly as I have the past year and a half.
Wow.
It's honestly unbelievable. And I've worked every Black Friday for the past, I don't know how many years, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. And it just got from the moment, at least in my experience, from the moment we reopened, it's people have forgotten that you're talking to a human being.
Is it because you're asking people to wear a mask? Is it just general customer questions? What are people getting testy about more than ever?
I think that's part of it. There's almost just a general, I don't know if the right way to say it would be lack of empathy or impatience is part of it. People are so impatient, which to a certain extent, I don't want to say I'm understanding of it because people have been dicks, but I understand if you were previously don't have any experience with things like the supply chain or things like that, coming into a store and seeing okay, they're out of everything I need. What is going on? You don't get what's going on. And that can be confusing when it's if you've previously never had a problem with UPS packages arriving on when they say they're going to arrive at the correct time. And all of a sudden there's 1 week, 2 week long delays. It is kind of hard to understand and you're not sure what's going on.
And they attack you you're the person who personally drove it over from wherever it was supposed to come from.
Yeah. The amount of people that that we had upset that, their UPS package is 2 days late, or that, the post office says their package is delivered, but it's not delivered. And they're, calling their local store, asking where their package is. And it's ma'am, I don't know.
You don't handle those shipments.
When would you ever have thought that calling here was going to help you with anything? I don't know, but.
And even before the pandemic, this was something I don't think people had a real grasp of unless they had some kind of experience in the service industry. It doesn't have to be a lot, even a short stint, you'll learn very quickly. But I was in retail for 10 years. And one of the things that irked me so much was if somebody would be looking for something and it was not displayed when they do the whole, can you check in the back? Like they think the back is this like magical space repository that has everything. I'm like,
It's the giving tree.
Yeah. Do you think that if we just, you think we're keeping it back there and we're like, ha ha ha, we're not going to sell it to them? Like, no.
We're going to make them ask for this so we can go in the back and pull it out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We get that all the time. I especially honestly, since the pandemic started, people like don't believe you anymore, which I want to be somewhat sympathetic to. I get it. I've been places where I'm like, okay, the kid I asked at like whatever big box store I'm at does not know and just doesn't want to check. Honestly, I get it. Like I wouldn't either. So like, if you just want to say you don't have it and don't want to check, I'm not pressing.
I think that in general, particularly in this country, there's a sense of entitlement that drives people to view service industry workers as like numbers on a paper, right? Just blank faces, and you're there to fulfill a need that I think I have. And if you can't fulfill it, then you're fucking up, or you don't care, or I'm going to lose my shit on you, because apparently in some people's minds, it's acceptable to do that. And I just have to imagine, as you said, as you alluded to, it's only been worse over the last 2 years.
So I wanted to also ask you about mask enforcement. That's been a real struggle, right?
Yes. Yeah. So at the retail location I currently work at, we are not enforcing masks. We have a sign on the door that I believe says masks recommended, but they're not required. So we had, coming back, my county, most of the state of Wisconsin had a mask mandate. So we were enforcing it, and it was up to us. Because the other thing is, so my store is in a mall location. Mall security, technically the whole mall had a mask mandate, but that was a whole other thing, is that if there's enough people in the mall, there's only so many security guards. And the few times that I ever saw a security guard ask people to put a mask on, they got screamed at.
Wow.
So, and then the other issue is other stores were not, either they just decided not to enforce the mask mandate, or they just don't have enough people to enforce the mask mandate. So when it like switches from store to store within kind of that same small area location, that becomes difficult as well. But my company, and mainly that was like my main job for quite a while there, many months, was enforcing the mask mandate, which.
That must have been hell.
Yeah, it was not fun. I will say, I, especially like right after we came back, and I was like, oh, okay. So people are it became very apparent that people are like for the most part, not all, definitely have like great customers who are very nice people and very respectful and understanding. But after I kind of like worked the first, month that we were reopened, and it was like, oh, so this is going to be hell. I got almost like a little nihilistic, and was like, every time that I was working was like, I'm going to enforce the mask mandate. And honestly, I hope someone screams at me, because I'll call security and then they'll probably let me not come into work tomorrow. So,
oh God, that's funny and also sad.
Yeah. Also at our location in particular as well, like the vast majority of my coworkers, were girls under the age of like 23, and they're not getting paid enough to like confront these grown ass people about not putting a mask on when there's like clearly a sign on the door and you're supposed to be wearing a mask in our entire county. So I kind of was like, if I'm here, you come get me. I will tell them to put it on or get out.
That's great, because I feel like even some managers don't really want to enforce the mask rules, whether or not they believe in the mandates. Like, even if you do believe in the mandate, you just don't want to deal with these dicks giving you hell in the store when you have so much else to deal with during the day.
Yeah, for sure. It is like you have to kind of make a judgment call. Every person who comes to the door, it's like, okay, is this person like, did they just take it off while they were in the hallway and forget to put it back on? Or are they going to like literally yell and scream at me?
And whip out their phone and start going on some spiel about freedom and personal rights and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I only ever had someone, I think, take a photo of me one time. But I did not get doxxed.
Really?
So I'm pretty sure, yes. But I think she was just like annoyed at me, and then nothing ever happened. Like, I don't think she even called corporate or anything, but once I saw her do that after she had left the store, I was like, oh my God, I think I told her my full name. Like, am I about to end up on Fox News?
The worst, I guess, that would have come of that is them reporting you to corporate. And what?
Yeah.
You were just doing your job.
Yeah.
So, like, whatever.
She asked me if it was, she came in and I asked if she would put a mask on, and she said, well, is it corporate policy to discriminate against people? And I just smiled and was like, oh yeah, it's a corporate policy. And then she did leave and possibly took my picture outside. But
I was gonna say I would have said exactly what you said. Like, took the words right out of my mouth there.
And so I'm sure many of the workers too, and yourself included, are uncomfortable working in an environment where you are face to face with people. Some of these people, of course, not wearing masks, or if they are, they just put it on for you and they haven't been wearing it elsewhere. Yeah. So they could very well be carrying COVID.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, when we first opened back up, I got kind of nihilistic about it because I was like, okay, so I'm here. Our average traffic when it was super slow, like right after we reopened, like last summer, was minimum like 115, 120 people a day. And that was like a very slow day. And just because of our hours, like I was there the whole time we were open. So it makes you think. I'm like, okay, well, I know that I'm wearing a mask and hopefully everyone I interact with is wearing a mask, but also like I've interacted with 120 people today. So I mean, I should say that I know of. I could have been asymptomatic before I got vaxxed, but that I know of, I've been completely fine. So
I have friends who have been in retail or service industry more largely during the pandemic. And you mentioned feeling kind of nihilistic. Some of them got to the point where they would actually be kind of relieved if there was an outbreak in their workplace because it would force everybody to take some time off.
And
I'm
get tested.
like, how fucked is that we're making people so miserable that they're happy when there's been potential COVID exposure so they can get away from people.
Yeah, it's completely nihilistic. But I would have been like, okay, well, worst case scenario, I get it. Hopefully I'm okay. But you know what? I won't have to go into work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The fact that you're like, I hope I don't die, but I get 2 weeks off work. So
yeah,
pretty
but
straight.
by corporate policy, I'm not allowed there. So yeah.
And I just get to sit at home and eat bagels.
Yes.
Good times. So, but speaking of the hazards of working in retail, you also brought up to me last week an incident that happened in your mall. I guess it was a couple years ago. And this is another reason people don't want to work retail. Do you want to tell that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So my mall, just about a year ago, almost exactly, there was a shooting at my mall. 8 people were injured.
My God.
By whatever mechanisms of the universe. No one was killed. The injuries were all not life-threatening, I guess.
Non-life-threatening.
Yes. Yeah. No one ended up in critical condition or anything, which I mean, still obviously horrific.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was while the mall was open. It was like very close to the entrance of my store. I happened to have been on vacation while it was happening. So, I was just getting like the security alerts, trying to call everyone I knew, asking what was happening and making sure people were okay. But regardless of whether or not it's actually happened to you at your workplace, it unfortunately like is a very big, very real fear that most people have to contend with. It's unfortunately not as unlikely, I think, as we'd like to think that like you will end up in an active shooter situation, or I mean, even something else like, I don't know. I mean, something else very dangerous in this country. But yeah, the gun violence thing is particularly like, it's unfortunately not as uncommon as I think we'd like to think.
Yeah. And as we all know, it doesn't matter if it's a retail, a church, a school, it could really happen anywhere. But if you're working at a mall or in retail 5-6 days a week, 8-9 hours a day, you're really running up the chances that a shooting could one day happen near or where you work. And it's a real consideration that people have to make now.
Yeah. Camille, did you ever have to do active shooter drills in any of your retail jobs?
So I've never had to do drills. But we definitely have like the active shooter training, which I guess is kind of the same thing. But like a program, you have to do it every year. Flee, hide, fight is, I believe, the one that we did, which is, the order of operations. You flee if you can. If you can't, you hide. If you have to, you fight. But I mean, I'm sure just like most people probably have to do it for their jobs. I definitely had to do it in school. It's unfortunately like you have to do it every year.
Yeah. So I think we've established why so many people are leaving their jobs because of the pandemic, because of other safety concerns, etc., low pay, all of that. Another interesting item in this Washington Post article, one economist said that it's really a workers' economy. It's a good time for people to be moving. Employees are really in charge for the first time in a long time. Now, Camille, I said, we know that just a few minutes ago, you said it took you a while to look for a new job. But I have to think that this economist is right, because there are so many businesses looking for workers right now. And in order to attract people, in some cases, you have to offer better benefits. And one example in this article was that some jobs have been offering signing bonuses. It is good to see that it can be easier to find a job and maybe get a nice little bonus or some other cool benefits right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly even at the store I work at, sorry, I'm not saying, because I tried to read our social media policy and it was very unclear about whether or not I was allowed to say where I work.
Oh, yeah, no pressure.
Okay.
That stuff tends to be purposefully nebulous.
Yeah.
So I hear ya.
We, at least at our company, corporate wide, like at the moment, there's not necessarily a signing bonus, but they are offering, like if you work, I believe the weekend of Black Friday and the weekend before Christmas, which I think is like December 18th and 19th, that weekend, your hourly rate goes up, I think, by $4. Ooh. So they're really trying to incentivize people to work, which at least at my workplace, my boss very kindly is letting me not work those weekends, because I just was a manager and she knows I've worked the last, I think, like 5 or 6 holidays in a row and haven't gotten to see my family or been home since I moved.
That's a good boss.
Yeah, she's awesome. Honestly, the reason I stayed as long as I did in management. But yeah, they're definitely doing whatever they can to entice you. And as far as like the additional pay goes, I think honestly, they must have just been scared people like flat out either would quit or wouldn't show up, because like the vast majority of retail, you have to work those weekends. Like it is not a choice. You don't, unless there's special circumstances, or, you're the places I've worked, like if you're going out of town and you get your request in like 2 months ahead of time, you might be able to get it off, but it's just so busy. They can't let people not work. So I think that definitely speaks to it. I mean, if you're willing to pay literally every employee an additional $4 an hour for, for however many hours they work that weekend, you're in dire straits. So,
yeah.
Well, and I think that employees also have more leverage now in terms of perks and benefits. Something that I'm really hoping to see is more retailers letting their employees sit the fuck down during their shift. This was something that was always so aggravating to me when I worked retail, this expectation that you're to be on your feet for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I remember working at a register. We weren't allowed to have water at the register with us. And it's like, you want me to stand here for hours without hydration?
Yeah.
It's ludicrous.
What else is it going to take, Camille, to get people back into, let's just focus on retail, back to retail? Is it kind of hopeless just because you're never going to be able to change customers? Or maybe there is some hope once we finish getting through the pandemic?
I definitely think there's hope. I think, first of all, it's pay. I know what I was getting paid as management, and my pay was a little bit higher than normal because of how many years I'd worked with the company, because of how many different jobs I'd had with this company. I'd worked at a outlet location, then I worked at the call center after college. Like I have a pretty like wide ranging knowledge of the company and have done a bunch of different stuff. Then was management. And then my pay was a little higher to begin with. And then like at my location, everyone got a little bit more of a raise than was scheduled because we stayed after the shooting.
Oh, wow.
So, and I was still being paid like a ridiculously small amount of money yearly.
Yeah.
It's also, at least at my location, because the mall's hours were shortened after the pandemic, they tried to extend them again, but a lot of stores honestly like just flat out don't have the employees to like keep the longer hours. So shorter hours is nice. It means your schedule is a lot more consistent. I think there's just a lot of things with retail, especially that people don't think about. Having like a very inconsistent schedule, no matter what your job is like not ideal and pretty horrible. Even if I had wanted to like join a club or like try to join like an intramural sports league or something to meet people, like I can't, because I can't guarantee having, like Tuesday night off every night for 2 months or whatever.
Or you don't know your schedule until like the day before the following week starts. So you really can't plan ahead. Like I know I've heard that from people a lot over the years. Like, oh yeah, maybe I can meet with you on Wednesday, but I don't know what my schedule is this week. So I'll get back to you later, I guess.
I think it's a lot of things. I don't think it's hopeless though. I think there are plenty of places around the world where retail workers are not treated like garbage.
Yeah.
And they're probably not having as horrible of a time as keeping people. But the pay, number one, I think that is a huge, huge issue.
Yeah. It increases people's feeling of self-worth, and obviously it gives them more flexibility in life and all of that.
Yeah.
One last question from me is somebody who, has so recently been in that kind of environment. I'm wondering, what can we all do as customers to be better customers to the retail workers who make our shopping experiences possible? What's like a common pet peeve that we could all do some work on to make y'all's lives a little easier?
Besides bringing you a chair to sit down in.
Right.
Right. Well, first of all, I just want to say the fact that you even thought to answer that question means you're probably a fantastic customer. Just remember that the person standing in front of you is a person, and have a little bit of empathy with them. Like, I understand not everyone that you interact with every day is going to be having a fantastic day. Like the expectation of, and not to say that like it's okay to be rude to people ever. Like I would not I would definitely like have a talk, make sure that they're okay. If any, like one of my coworkers was outright rude to someone, like that's not cool. Regardless of whether they're a customer or like your other coworkers, whatever, you shouldn't be rude to people around you. But yeah, definitely just remember that they're a person. My number one pet peeve, I actually had a shift over the weekend and I almost lost my mind. If you are returning something at a counter, do not just give the person across the counter your garbage. Like if you're returning an online order and it came in a bag or a box, they are not a janitor, or they're not meant to like just be a human garbage can receptacle for you. Now, I totally get like they probably have a garbage can back there, or like they might be collecting recycling, and like that's not a problem. Just ask like they're a person.
Yeah.
Don't just like leave your garbage in front of them. Or a lady threw her bag at me.
What?
And it was, the worst part was like, it was not even rude. She wasn't angry at me. She was just like, oh, I don't want this garbage, and like tossed it across the counter at me. And I was like,
oh my God.
I also don't want your garbage, but okay.
Yeah.
Like I have a garbage can. I'm happy to put it in there. It's 2 seconds of work from me, but anyways.
Oof.
Yeah.
Camille,
Wow.
you just reminded me of a story that I have for you that I'm going to share in After Dark about working returns desks. I feel like you and I will be able to commiserate about that.
I think if you don't work retail, you may just not know. It does kind of depend on where you go, but if you are nice, like there are a lot of times where it may be like outside of corporate policy, but if you're cool, if you're nice to me, I will do what I can to help you. Do not be an asshole. It will not get you anywhere. And I say that with a caveat because I know there are places where literally they're like they're not allowed to like make exceptions to rules. Like the system won't let them or whatever. At the store that I work at and most of the stores I've worked at before, like if you are nice to me, I will do the return for you outside of the return window, or I'll work with you. I'll try to give you store credit. Like if your jeans that you're wearing, they ripped after wearing them 2 times, I'll like do what I can to exchange them for you. If you are an asshole, absolutely not.
Right. Kindness goes a long way.
Yes.
I totally hear where you're coming from. It's mind-boggling to me that people can behave that way to strangers who are just trying to do their job. I'll never understand it. They're just unique types of people who I guess are in really bad moods. But Laura mentioned After Dark. In today's After Dark, we will be talking about retail nightmares. Obviously, Camille has worked in retail. Laura has worked in retail. I've worked in retail a little bit. We're going to share some stories. Also, we received some stories from our listeners. So it's going to be another gossipy episode where we go off on some customers who treated the employees poorly. So we'll get to that in After Dark today. Camille, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your insight and the stories that you shared.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, of course. And also really appreciate your love for bagels. Before we get to recommendations, it's time for a word from our final sponsor this week, Felix Gray. They are the blue light glasses that started it all. 5 years ago, Felix Gray set out to create eyewear that would improve daily screen time. Since then, Felix Gray has been on a mission to create a better relationship with technology. Thanks to these glasses, you can help reduce the eye strain, headaches, and insomnia that comes with staring at a screen for as long as we so often do. Felix Gray lenses filter 15 times more of the blue light that's bothering you. Whether you're heading back to the office, back to school, or maybe you want to come up with a helpful gift idea for someone, this is also a thoughtful gift because it really does help them. You can count on Felix Gray. Visit felixgrayglasses.com/MILL to check out what they have to offer. These have been so helpful for all of us here at Millennial, and they look great too. I'm obsessed with wearing them on Zoom calls these days. It just puts me together a little bit more. So I really love wearing them when I'm in meetings and also when I'm podcasting. By the way, non-prescription and prescription glasses are available. Check them out now, felixgrayglasses.com/MILL. That's FELIXGRAY glasses.com/MILL. Free shipping, free returns, free exchanges. felixgrayglasses.com/MILL. It's time for recommendations. I had recommended that Beto doc earlier. So Laura, what's yours?
So my recommendation this week is shower bombs. And I know that probably sounds alarming, but they're not actual bombs. They are bath bombs for your shower. So if you're like me and you don't have a bathtub that you can like soak in and enjoy a bath bomb, these shower bombs are designed to release essential oils in the steam of your shower. You just put them on the floor in the shower when you're in there taking a shower, and it just releases these like lovely perfumed, like rosy lavender type tones, and it's very relaxing. You can find these on Amazon for like $15. They were such a great
idea.
Find. Yeah, I know.
Wow. Yeah, definitely want to try these. I'm a bath bomb fan. I'm down for a bath bomb from time to time.
Me too.
Cool. Good rec. And Camille, what's yours?
Yeah. So with holiday shopping season come up, as much as you might want to go to a large retail location, my recommendations for something different. I have in recent years gotten into the habit of, for like birthdays, Christmas, whatever, going to Etsy and finding like specifically pop culture related gifts for people of like stuff they like, particularly books. If people have like, if your family or a friend has like a favorite book series, you can find so much stuff from like small independent artists, creators relating to that topic. And a lot of it is not, I know, like if it's, I mean, for instance, like Harry Potter, you can find stuff that's not like super obviously like Warner Brothers Harry Potter related, if that makes sense. So like the sweatshirt I'm wearing now is just, it's embroidered. It says "No mourners, no funerals," which is from Six of Crows. If anyone's out there is a fan of Six of Crows, Crooked Kingdom. And it's just something like a little different, but with a hint of a nod to, you know, that thing the person you're buying a gift for may love. And you're supporting, you know, like someone's small business.
Yeah.
Love it.
That's great for all those reasons. It's a thoughtful, unique gift. You know, don't you want to do something different for the loved ones in your life? Well, if you have any feedback about today's episode, you can contact us by writing directly to millennialshow@gmail.com or by using the contact form or anonymous confessional on millennialshow.com. Also, and I can't believe we didn't plug these earlier when we were talking about our new social media manager, Chloe. Do follow us on social media. We are Millennial Show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And we're, like we said, really looking forward to having Chloe manage our social media channels. It's going to be great to have the Gen Z perspective on those channels. And I think she'll be changing them up in a bunch of different ways that we're really excited about. And last but not least, we would love your support at patreon.com/millennial. It's because of support from listeners like maybe you and definitely Camille that we are able to do this show every week. So we really appreciate everybody's support. It costs a lot to run a podcast. We deeply appreciate having help from listeners out there. And Camille, thank you again for your support. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you guys.
You've been listening for a while, right? Since 2005, you said?
Yes, I am an OG MuggleCast listener.
Truly
Wow.
OG.
Listen to everything in between as well.
Awesome.
Thank you for sticking with us all this time.
Yeah, really. We've all grown up
It's been
together.
a journey.
Of course. Yeah. When I told my best friend, I was like, oh my God, you won't believe it. I got an email from Andrew. She was like, what?
I love that.
She doesn't listen, but she knows. I talk about, I'm sure a lot of people who listen know they talk about you guys like they know you. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
my friend Laura was talking about this one time when.
I mean, wait, the podcast I listen to.
Yeah,
Laura
no,
on
I
the
feel that
podcast.
way too. Like
Yeah.
I monitor the Discord and I see things that y'all are saying in there, and I'll bring that up in conversations with, you know, people in my day-to-day life. And they'll be like,
Oh,
wait,
yeah.
who's that I haven't heard you talk about that person before. And I'm like, oh, it's just a friend of mine, you know, because I'm not gonna be like, well, I have a podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also get it as a listener who's a fan of certain podcasters myself. Like, I would be freaking out
Yeah.
too if my favorite podcaster contacted me. Like, yeah, so I totally get it. All right. Well, that wraps up today's episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm Andrew.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Camille.
Bye, y'all.
everyone.